What's going on, guys? Welcome to All in ACL graduate interview number 10 with Vybhav Kandadai. He will be joining us here shortly. Going to talk about his return to surfing in 6 months post-op in Hawaii, which was absolutely epic. So I will, before I start telling his story, I'm going to have him join. We'll see if we can get him in here. So Vybhav, at the bottom, there should be a plus where you can click on that and request to join. And that should come through here. Okay, we're running into a little bit of technical difficulty here. I'm sorry about that. Give me a minute here. Oh, I just got it. LCI. Hey, Vabev, I'll talk to you directly. So I just got someone else request to join. So I tried inviting you again. It said unable to join. Just want to make sure you're on your phone rather than an iPad or a laptop. Um, but if that's still giving you a hard time, let me know and we can start it over again. But okay.
There we
We're
go.
live. There we go. I was getting
Sorry
nervous.
about
We
that.
ran it. Not your fault. Not your fault. It's something going on with Meta because we ran into this with another client last week. But I was
Oh,
going to
good.
be very upset. But I think we got it going. So, dude, super excited to have you on. You are looking good. Stash looks
Thank you, man.
good.
And thank
Um,
you.
San
Brought it back for the
Diego
summer,
looks. Yeah, San Diego looks good on you.
Thank you, man. No, it's good to be here. Great to catch up with you too, Tommy. It's been a long time since we spoke, so
Yeah, absolutely.
which is a good thing because that means my knee is healthy and I'm playing with it all the time. So yeah,
Exactly.
things are good. Things are
Exactly.
good.
So I'll run through a little introduction here, but you'll do an even better job yourself. So yeah, Bob started with us after tearing
Yeah.
his ACL. And the big thing to know about him is that he did this right from the beginning. He had a goal that he set his mind to. He was like, I have a trip to Hawaii, 7 months post-op. I'm a big surfer. I want to be surfing there when I go on it. We set that goal. He started out with us early. After about 3 weeks at in-person PT, he was like, I need more than this. Recognized it, joined and had an absolute model recovery. Definitely something that, I think a lot of people can learn from, and just hearing his story. But yeah, just tell a little bit, yeah, about
Yeah.
yourself, kind of tell your story. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Tommy. And hello, everyone who's looking into all in ACL over here. My name is Vybhav Kandadai. I'm from the Bay Area originally. I live in San Diego. During my ACL tear and then subsequent recovery, I was based out of San Francisco and generally the Bay Area the whole time. So I'm 30 years old. I tore my ACL when I was 27, so about 3 years ago. Um, and yeah, it was a hell of a journey. But if it wasn't for Tommy at my side, I'm not sure I would have made the recovery that I did. But really glad I tapped in with Tommy early and enrolled in the program. It was a big game changer for me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, talk a little bit about what first piqued your interest with All in
Yeah.
ACL, and because we've now, as we've grown, and you were kind of at the forefront of this, we used to say that the people who would start with us early had kind of learned the hard way, right? Uh, they were someone who'd torn their ACL two, three times, or had a meniscus repair. Or there's someone who's like, hey, I'm a semi-pro athlete, occupational athlete, or there's someone who's works in healthcare, right? As we've grown, we have more and more people getting this message out, learning what a big deal this is. We've had so many people like you who are just like, hey, I want to do this right from the beginning. You were at the forefront of that, but talk a little bit about, what first piqued your interest with all in
Yeah.
ACL, and yeah, made you want to go
Yeah.
this route.
Yeah. So, I don't really, it's interesting. I don't fall into any of those buckets, right? This was my
Yeah.
first knee injury or really my first, I've had injuries before, broken some bones and more minor sprains and stuff, playing and, being rowdy and things like that. But no, nothing quite like a full ACL reconstruction. And I'm not a pro athlete. I'm a very mediocre athlete at best, I would say. So don't fall into that bucket either. No pro sports to get back to, but surfing, snowboarding, just generally, sports has always been a big part of my life, and getting back to sports was really important for me. And so when I found out I'd torn my ACL, I was doing a lot of research and you know probably was spiraling a little bit, and heard about some horror stories for people who had the surgery but maybe didn't commit as much to the rehab, or for whatever reason they had complications with their surgery or complications with the rehab, and they had long-term damage as a result, or needed to get another surgery. And that was my big fear was, hey, if I'm going to do this, I really want to come back 100% to sports. I really want to commit to this. I'd started looking into all in ACL and figured, hey, what's the harm in investing just a little bit extra to really make sure I am fit and able to play sports for the rest of my life? I was 27 when I tore my ACL, so I was hoping to, be able to play sports for another at least 40 years on top of that, right? So really, if you're thinking long term and the longevity, um, for me, it was a no-brainer to really look into a specialist like Tommy.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's, one of the things I'm proudest of in our mission with All in ACL is like, we love stories like yours, right? The rescue stories are awesome too. They make a great story, but I know that person went through a lot to get to us, right? So the more we can have someone like you who's like, hey, I recognize this early. I saw what a big deal this is. And, I don't think, we don't encourage spiraling and negative thoughts, but I do think knowledge is power, right? Like learning about the high retear statistics, some of the negative outcomes that people get, looking into it, why is that, and finding out that there is a big gap in what people get with rehab compared to what they need, and taking action upon it is something that I think has led to much better outcomes for a lot of people. Um, what do you think? Yeah, you said, hey, I'm not a professional athlete, but I'm someone who as a snowboarder, I remember when we first talked, you were like, I surf almost every day. Talk, what type of person do you think is this for? What type of person says, hey, I'm not going to, because you're, like you said, you're living in the Bay Area. It's obviously a very, major city. They have, great institutions there. What about, why was in-person PT not enough for you?
Yeah, yeah. So, it's I don't want to blame the PTs. I don't think it's the PTs. I think it's more the model, right, and the way it's designed. So, um, just like, by the way, just I recommend if you're thinking about the surgery, you should shop surgeons. So, you know, talk to a few different surgeons. For me, this is my knee. I need my knee. It's really important. I think most people would really prioritize the health of their knee. It's a very important joint. And so I shopped around surgeons, right? And I went to
Mhm.
UCSF, and I ended up going with Dr. Ma. highly recommend. He is a leading ACL surgeon, and that's what he does all day long is fixes ACLs with the surgery. And similarly, uh, the PT, the rehab, it's equally important to the surgery. It's not, the surgery is just half the puzzle. The second half of the puzzle is the PT and the rehab. And you should shop PTs. You should do some digging and really make sure like you're enrolling in the right program for you. At the time, I just went along with the UCSF PT program, and I just felt like that model in person, they were just maybe understaffed and had a lot of patients. I felt like, I was showing up. It was kind of rushed. I felt like I was given the same recovery program as someone who was, 50 years older than me and, in a different chapter in their lives. And I felt like, hey, this is not aggressive enough. I want to push it. I want to get back to sports ASAP. It's not about just being able to walk again. It's about being able to play at the level I was at prior to the surgery. And I felt like I had a gut. My gut was telling me, as someone who's not a healthcare professional, who's not an ACL expert, who's not a PT, my gut was telling me I needed more than what traditional PT could offer, or that by investing in a little bit more, I increased my chance for a successful surgery and rehab. And so it really just, I trusted my gut. I figured, what's the harm in at least trying out Tommy? It was my first time using a virtual PT. It was my first time kind of going through those motions. And uh, yeah, no regrets. No regrets here.
Yeah, no, that was such a great explanation, and that's such a good point of something we say too. Of like, hey, I remember saying this to you the first time talking. We say it all the time. Of yeah, shop around surgeons, shop around PTs. I always say, don't. I will never use the phrase "trust the process" in this recovery, and I actually really dislike that phrase because I think you need to understand the process, right? And they wanted to ask you to blindly trust the process. You're especially in something as unique as this. Trust the process may work in a more medical situation where it's like, hey, you're getting this treatment, but most people want to understand what they're going through and what they're doing. When it comes to rehabbing from this, you really have to execute on the process. So you really need to understand it. So to ask, hey, we talk to a lot of people who think, hey, what's your criteria to start running? What's your criteria to start jumping? They're like, I think my PT has a plan. And we would say, it doesn't matter if your PT has a plan because you're the one who has to execute on it. So unless you really understand that plan, it's very hard to execute on it the way you need to. And that's what I always say, like, hey, ask us a million questions, understand the process, get to the root of it. Don't just trust the process
Yep.
because that's how you're going to get the results you want. Um, Talk a little bit about, what surprised you the most once you did join and get started. I know you said, hey, you're like, I see the benefits of this, obviously did your research, but yeah, I think there's always a little bit of a, like you said, first time doing something online,
Yep.
not hands-on. What surprised you the most with this?
Um, it's interesting that it reminded you jogged my memory here 'cause it's been a few years, right? You really jogged my memory when we started talking about the in-person PT. I think it was about at the 2 month mark or maybe the 3 month mark. I stopped going to the in-person PT altogether, and I just stuck with Tommy's program. The in-person PT wasn't even emphasizing strength training like traditional weightlifting, right? Which has been something that's really important for me my whole life. And every athlete I know spends time lifting weights, and they weren't even emphasizing like getting back to barbell squatting, getting on the leg press machine. None of that was emphasized, and all the proprioception stuff that was there. Tommy's emphasizing that as well, but Tommy's a big believer in like strength training, and that just spoke to my core too. So I think, going into the rehab and into the journey, I always thought Tommy would be like supplementing the in-person PT, but turns out the in-person PT was more supplementing Tommy's program. And a few months into it, I was like, why am I even, I don't want to go. This is a waste of time. Like I'm already making great strides purely focusing on Tommy's program, which really includes everything an in-person PT has. So I think that really surprised me. And then just the fact that, you know, you can work with a virtual PT. Like technology is advanced enough to really get us there. And so you got to be that guy who brings his camera into the gym. and I'd make a joke with people around me. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm not an influencer. I'm just, I'm just, I'm rehabbing my knee, and I gotta film things for my PT." And everyone in the gym is really cool about it, and everyone is there to support each other. So, yeah, it's. I think for everyone, it's a personal journey. You're gonna encounter different twists and turns, no matter who you are. Everyone's body's different. So I think those were a few surprising
Yeah.
realizations that I had, and changed up some previous misconceptions that I had as well.
Yeah. No, and you hit the nail on the head with filming yourself and feedback. I think a lot of people are like, how can you correct my form? And I know you've talked about, hey, you've been a weightlifter for many years now. I remember actually going over your deadlifting and squatting form and talking about some back issues that you had had,
Yep,
and just how much we were able to improve that. And I think that's a question we have a lot when people, before they start, that we've now addressed with our content and putting out some of the form feedback that we give. But people used to always be like, how can you correct my form? And we've seen with slow motion video analysis we really feel we're able to correct form better than even what we were able to do with just in person, with our hands.
totally, totally. No, it's the technology's there. You just gotta commit to it, and people are pretty cool. Like they're in the gym. You can ask people to give you some space. Like, hey, I'm just recording a video. Like, if you don't mind, you mind if I film this here? Or if you don't mind being in it, you can be in it. But if you don't want to be in it, I think just open communication and general basic gym etiquette and just being friendly can really help with the process. And virtual PT works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And talking about, I always want to highlight this too, because I never one thing about the internet that I think sometimes gives people pause is like, I don't want to promise hey, everyone that works with us is going to be surfing at 6 months post-op, right? And what I want to be really crystal clear on is like, Vybhav's results were amazing. He's a model for people in this recovery, right? And I wrote some of this stuff down at 4.5 months post-op, he had 90%, over 90% quad and hamstring strength, despite having a hamstring graft. Was back to running at 5 months, back to surfing at 6 months. Absolutely crushed that recovery. But we had an open and honest conversation about what are the risks and what are the rewards of surfing at 6 months. It's earlier than biologically is recommended. Now, I did not say, hey, you're this is cleared. You've been cleared to do this return sport. We say, hey, this is the criteria. This is what we can do to minimize your risk of injury, but know that doing it earlier than 9 months, there's increased risk there. Talk a little bit about, kind of the commitment and planning and just how we reverse engineered your goals. Because I was even looking for you. I remember writing down the specific dates of like, we're going to have you in the gym this date. We're going to have you longboarding this date. We're going to have
Yeah,
you running this date. And then it followed pretty spot on.
yeah. So, and Tommy, you might need to jog my memory a bit too, because it's been a few years here. I remember like we had and we use this at work all the time, right? This we call it a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious
Yeah.
goal, right? And I think there's so much of this recovery is like mental, right? That I remember that first month, that the first few weeks, it fucking
Yeah.
sucks. Like, let's just be frank. Sorry, can I curse on
Yeah,
this?
you can curse.
My bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're
It
welcome to
blows.
curse.
It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's depressing. You are, especially if you've never had a surgery like this or an injury like this, like you're literally asking yourself things like, oh my, I'm never gonna walk again properly. Like how can I come back to normalcy after this? And so much of the battle is mental. I remember we set this big goal. I had this wedding in Hawaii to go to. I love surfing. I surf all the time, and in the Bay Area, and now in San Diego. I really wanted to surf when I was in Hawaii. I can't go to the islands without spending time in the water. And so we knew, all right, this is 6 months out from the surgery. Let's work backwards and having, I think, setting a goal for yourself, like setting an event or like, hey, I really want to make it work for this one specific thing. I think was really was a game changer for us, reverse engineering my recovery. And so for every person who's going through this, I would advise like, hey, pick a date, something realistic, right? 6 months is maybe it's aggressive, but at least it's something to work towards. And be like, hey, at the 6 month mark, I'm gonna go on this trip, I'm gonna do this hike, I'm gonna go do this activity, go to this music festivals, anything, right? Like, um, I think setting a goal like that, something to look forward to, something to work towards, was and a tangible date attached to that was huge. Does that answer the question, actually, Tommy? Or
It does. Yeah, yeah. I think that really just understanding about if you want a specific outcome, you need a specific plan to get you there. And I think that, like, hey, we had this very specific outcome. And I think sometimes people can go into this rehab of like, I want to return back to sport a year from now. And I want to be confident without understanding of, okay, what is month 0 to 3, what does that need to look like, right? What does 3 to 6 need to look like? What does 6 to 9 need to look like to get me to where I want to be? And I think a lot of times, if you're in this recovery, kind of like you were, where it was like, hey, I have this very specific goal and I'm going in person PT and it's, they're not even getting me back in the gym. I don't even see a plan back to it. How is that going to be met?
yeah,
And I think seeing that mismatch is really important. So, talk a little bit about, what would you say, just in terms of like starting early? How did that inform your experience
yeah.
and just how you felt throughout this instead of feeling like, okay, kind of for the wait and see crowd, instead of being like, well, let me see how it goes. Let me give, UCSF is obviously very reputable. What rather than just, hey, let me give that a chance. What made you say I want to get a plan early?
It for me it was, and maybe this is just coming from a place of privilege, right? Like, um, you know, this is my knee. I'm not taking any chances. Wait and see. Like, why would I want to wait and see? I'm trying to get back to sports. I'm trying to get back to my life. There is no time to wait and see. So I saw it as I got to go 150% and throw every possible resource at it. And luckily, like have access to a resource like Tommy and all in ACL, and I'm in a place in life where I could afford the services. And so for me, it was a no brainer. There's nothing to wait and see. Like, sure, like, maybe I could have saved a few bucks by not using Tommy's services, but for me, the price really, it's like a surf trip or a new surfboard or something like that. And instead of investing money in something like that, I invested it in all in ACL, and it's my knee, man. For anyone listening or anyone debating it, this is your knee. You only get I was gonna say you only get one, but you only get two.
Get
You
two,
only
but
get
you need
one left
both.
knee.
Yeah, you
You
need
only get
both.
one left knee. You only get one right knee.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like you've got the rest of your life to live, and so it's all about your priorities and your values. For me, I need my knee to have the quality of life that I envision for myself, and there was just no logic in waiting. I'd have rather spent the money and for whatever reason, if I would have been fine just using the standard prescribed in person PT, and Tom, for whatever reason, if it turned out that Tommy's program wasn't necessarily bringing as much value as we might have thought it would, that's okay. There's no money wasted. It's you're investing in resources to get back to the lifestyle that you really want, and that's a really big part of your own happiness, right? And so for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. No, and that's such a critical point. I always, I think a lot of people when they first find us are early on. Now that we have so many stories and people like you telling their stories, I think people used to think like this must be for college athletes, pro athletes, and we have some of those, yes. But what I always say is our clientele is really people just like you, which are people just like me, right? We're about the same age. It's people 25 to 45 who are like, I can't imagine my life without surfing, without snowboarding, without jujitsu, without playing soccer, without, playing pickup basketball. And then, when I have kids, I want to be able to run around and I want to continue doing this for, 20, 30, 40 more years. I think that's such a good way to view it. And the unfortunate reality is, as you said, systemically, obviously, like, yeah, UCSF and San Francisco, it's all very, reputable institutions, but the system does not allow
Yep.
working, to give people truly what they need. Talk a little bit about this model in terms of, we talked about, okay, the digital piece and some of the feedback, but talk a little bit about like planning and programming, because I think that's one thing that we always harp on that I think people don't recognize. Of For me, I was at an institution similar to UCSF called HSS in New York. Same thing, very reputable hospital, top surgeons in the world. but I was limited in what I could provide people in a session based model because it's like someone like you. I remember looking through, okay, San Francisco has hills. You live in a fourth story walk
Oh yeah.
up. You were living at home, with your parents to recover initially. How do you get back in? I remember talking about your first work event that you were like, I'd like to be able to do that. How do we manage those loads on your knee across the week? How do we make sure we're checking different boxes on different days with like a true strength and conditioning plan, not just rinse repeat with the same band exercises? Yeah, talk a little bit about the kind of pros of that model as opposed to a session based model.
So I think some of the pros are, from what I remember too, is just the flexibility of a model like that. It's like, hey, you're not rushing to meet your PT appointment where they only give you, 25 minutes in a 30-minute session anyways, and if you're 5 minutes late, they're showing up 5 minutes late, and then they're rushing around trying to meet with the four other patients that they have in the PT studio with you. This is, at your own discretion. And so you've got a crazy work schedule. That's okay. You have all these other childcare, all these other things going on. That's okay. This model allows you to do it at your own pace. Well, obviously, you have to maintain the consistency. You have to hit within the week, you have to do the exercises. There's no getting around that. You have to put in the work. But, if you've got a 24 gym membership, right, you could go in at 3 a.m. and knock out your PT, right? If you're working night
Yeah.
shift, graveyard shift, something crazy like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. But there are people like that out there,
We've
and
had
they're
people do
probably
it. We've had
struggling,
people
right,
do it.
Tommy? There's people who work night shifts or they work these
100%.
crazy hours, and they're probably like in a tough spot because traditional PT is open from 9 to 5, right,
Yeah.
on Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
and maybe Saturdays they're open from like 12 to 3 or something like that. So this program, this model, lets you do it at your own discretion, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge bonus for anybody, right? Regardless of your personal situation, right? Having
Yeah.
access to that is huge. But this model does require you to be committed and motivated, right? I think any ACL rehab will require you to be committed and motivated.
Yeah.
So there's no getting around it. Whether you go with Tommy or whether you go with the traditional in-person stuff, and do everything the doctor prescribes, if you're not putting in the hours on your own, if you're not doing the at-home exercises, if you're not going to the gym and doing all the exercises, you're going to have a tough time recovering.
Yeah. And that's such a good point. And I think a critical point of, I think one of the things we really highlight for people, like, you even talked about this with you were originally going to in-person PT when you started with us and you stayed with them for a little bit. One of the things we talk about is even if you're going in-person PT twice a week, you will need to be in the gym
Oh
the
yeah.
other days a week. You don't need to be in the gym 7 days a week, but you need to be in the gym, at some points as much as 4 to 5 days a week,
Yep.
certainly four. So the progress is made with what you're doing outside of those sessions. This allows us to map out and progressively overload what you're going outside of what you're getting outside of these sessions and what you're doing. And I think that's a really important thing that we try to stress of like the principles of strength and conditioning that we honor. Like you said, of like, hey, you wanted to surf, you wanted to snowboard, you wanted to be able to run, jump, cut pivot. If they're not getting you in the gym with real heavy load, right? You need to progressively
Oh yeah.
overload, lift weight, barbell train. You're not going to rebuild that muscle that you need to be confident doing those things. And in your case, what we always say is, even if you weren't someone who strength trained before this, we would say, hey, your path back to the surfboard goes through the gym. And that's whether you take the additional guidance that we give or you're going in person PT, you're going to be needing to go to the gym outside of that.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that's where we really try to make
I
sure we're maximizing what you're doing.
I'd add to that, Tommy. You're going to need to be going to the gym for the rest of your life. It's not a post, just the first 6 months after rehab, the first 9 months.
Yeah.
If you don't like leg day, that sucks
Yeah.
because you're gonna have to do leg day
Yeah.
at least once, if not twice a week, probably for the rest of your life, if you want
Yeah.
to maintain the health of your knees and keep
Yeah.
cutting and pivoting and playing sports. So get used to leg day
Yeah.
because it's either get used to leg day or maybe you don't get to use your legs. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think that reality of like that honesty is something we really try to provide that is so important. I think sometimes people don't want to lay out what a big deal this injury is or how hard this recovery is or just how much work you need to do. Where, people don't want, your surgeon's not going to tell you, hey, if you want to get back to everything you want to go back to, you need to get in the gym. Some surgeons will, but a lot won't. And I think that's so important for people to understand that, the path back to surfing, path back to hiking, back to running, back to snowboarding, skiing goes through the gym. And you're going to have to put in that time. And even if you haven't been a gym person before, you're going to have to become one, or at least become a strength training person, because it really is necessary. You touched on something that I totally believe in, the maintenance piece, right? But talk a little bit about, because I love that you're kind of like, hey, I forget a lot of this because it goes by quick in some
Yeah.
degree. It feels so long when you're in it, but then when you look back, you're like, shit, that year flew by,
Yeah.
right? Talk a little bit, and what we always say is if you really face this head on and do it right, it'll be, the bar for maintenance is much lower compared to the bar to get fully rehabilitated. So
Yeah.
I agree, leg day once a week at the minimum, probably more likely twice a week at points for the rest of your life. But the good news is, with or without an ACL injury, if you want to be a really good, surfer, snowboarder, active at 45, 50, 55, you're going to want to strength train anyway.
Yep.
That is the fountain of youth. So it's skills that last you a lifetime. Talk a little bit about, because we've talked about what you achieved during the rehab, but talk a little bit about your results
Yeah.
now, kind of where you're at, what you're doing, how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So, but prior to the surgery, I was just surfing pretty much exclusively 3 to 5 days a week in the Bay Area or down in like Santa Cruz area. And then I'd supplement that, like, okay, maybe the surf's not looking good. I'd be doing like group fitness classes, hit workouts, not in the gym lifting heavy weights like I used to. I used to do that through college and in high school and stuff like that. But I wasn't really doing that for the last few years leading up to my surgery. I was really all in on just surfing and surfing and surfing. And now I have to take a hybrid approach. I've even noticed, like, sometimes I'll a week or two will go by. I'm surfing. I'm not prioritizing leg day. I'm not prioritizing strength training in the gym, and I can feel like, oh, like there's something going on with my knee. I can feel it's not as strong. And then as soon as I go to the gym and I hit squats, barbell squats, I hit lunges, I'm doing all the strength training. Uh, I can feel like that strength coming back to my knee. It's crazy. It's you got to go through it, I think, to really feel it. But really, like these days, it looks a lot like I'm definitely got to keep my gym membership. I'm in the gym twice a week doing leg day, a lot of leg day, and then like full body stuff. With surfing, that's a lot of upper body. It's not a lot of lower body. So people think when you're surfing, you're up on a board riding a wave. You're only doing that for like maybe 10% of the surf session.
A lot of
The majority of the
paddling.
surf session, you're lying on your belly and you're paddling. You're just paddling,
Yeah.
paddling, paddling. So it's all shoulders, back, chest, all upper body, all core. And it's not a leg workout at all. So I have to go to the gym. I have to barbell squat. I have to deadlift. I have to hit the machines, do some lunges. And then I try to do some full body, like aerobic stuff with kettlebells as well for like surf conditioning.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'll try to do that like twice a week.
Yeah.
So definitely leg day is it's the most important. I wouldn't say it's the most. I guess they're all important. You got to train everything, but
The legs
can't
feed the
skip leg
wolf.
day. You cannot skip leg day. That's for sure.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about when you are staying on that, how
Yep.
confident do you feel skiing? How do you
Yep.
feel surfing? And how do you feel snowboarding?
Yep.
Yeah, what do we always say you can come back stronger. You can, put this in your rearview mirror. Talk a little bit
Yep.
about your experience. Can you?
Yeah. You absolutely can. That first season snowboarding that I came back to snowboarding, I did wear my even though both you, Tommy, and the doctor had all recommended, I didn't need it necessarily. I did wear the brace. I forgot the brand.
The Don
It's
Joy
the
brace.
fancy, exactly, the
Yeah.
Don Joy, one of the Don Joys. I did wear that my first season back in snowboarding, and actually I think I wore it my second season too. When I returned back to snowboarding, just as like an extra layer of, it was just a mental thing. Maybe I needed it,
Yeah.
maybe I didn't. I think if I were to go back, I'd wear like a very like thin brace. Although, Tommy, I think you don't even believe in that stuff anyways, in the thin braces.
Yeah, I mean, the research, but I believe in, what I have no problem with that as, hey, you feel good. The
Yep.
research is pretty clear that, and I told you this when you went surfing, which I think was also part of it too, was the
Yep.
research does actually show that Don Joy brace does decrease your risk of re-tear under
Yes.
a year. So when we
Under a
talked
year.
about
Yep.
surfing, it was wise to do it when
Yes.
you're doing at 6 months.
Yes.
So, what I said was beyond a year, the research really says it doesn't make a difference.
Yep.
But you also were used to it and we're doing it. So I certainly had no problem with that.
So with snowboarding, I was using it, after the year mark. I'll be honest too. And this is a personal decision. I've taken it easier on the snowboard since I'm not charging. I'll hit like double black sometimes and just like end up on my ass happily, just like sliding down the mountain. And me and my friends were going harder. That was like a mid 20s. Now I'm in my early 30s, and I'm more like a hey, let's hit the groomers, and I'll have a couple beers at the lodge afterwards. I love snowboarding. It's fun. I love being out on the mountains. I love surfing a lot more. I think from a progression standpoint, if you're into board sports, just for all the board sports people out there, with surfing, you can progress a lot more without having to basically, charge double blacks or go get as much air as possible. Things that like really heighten your risk for getting injured is snowboarding. Is basically snowboarding is a lot more painful than surfing, and so
Yeah.
I'm more committed to surfing. It's just I like the sport overall more, regardless of risk of injury.
Mhm.
So for me, I that's what I go all in on with snowboarding. I take it easier, just because I still want to keep it up. When I have kids one day, I want to introduce them to both sports. But surfing's my primary sport, so that's where I go harder. That's where I'll charge on bigger days and things like that. And snowboarding, I take it easier. This is just a personal, this is how I want to prioritize things because surfing's my number one sport. I think a lot of the Tommy's fans and viewers here, or anyone considering this, you guys are probably skiing maybe your number one sport, and if that's the case, go fucking hard on skiing. Like
Yeah.
don't let this get in your way. I just already had a number one sport that is my priority, and I want to make sure I'm healthy year round for that. But if skiing is your number one sport, I truly think this program will give you the confidence to go hard in skiing.
Yeah.
Uh, you'll just start to prioritize. Maybe you won't go play, volleyball on the weekends. Maybe you'll cut down on that because,
Yeah.
you want to preserve your knees for your main sports, right? So those are
Yeah.
kind of personal decisions that I made. If you love
Yeah.
skiing and you love volleyball equally, I'm sure you'll find a way to make them both work
Yeah.
and fit into your program.
Confidence wise, how do you feel when you surf? Do you feel like
Oh,
your knee is, supporting you and doing the way you do? You've mentioned progressing. Do you feel like you're a better surfer now than you
oh,
were,
100%. I'm better in every way at surfing, at weightlifting. My
Yeah.
legs are stronger since the program. So confidence is I don't even think about my knees anymore.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. There's going to be a day. It may even take like a year. I think it took me like a year and a half, but you'll realize like a week will go by and you'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about my ACL.
Yeah.
And when you're in the program, you're thinking about your ACL all day long,
Yeah.
24/7. But there will be a day where you don't think about your ACL anymore, and it's a good feeling when you remember, like, oh wait, I'm not thinking about it as much as this ACL used to, dominate my life, and now I don't even think about it. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting when that switch happens.
No, 100%. 100%. And I think that's so important of, when you put in that work, like we talked about criteria and we mapped it out and you were over 90% strength testing at 4.5 months, but you were progressed on both sides and over 100% at a year, over 100% hop testing at a year when you finish with us. And being able to achieve that, that time works in your favor, right? Then that time adds up. One of the things we talk about that I think is really helpful, we talk about confidence a lot, and confidence becomes this buzzword in ACL rehab, but we always say you need criteria first to then build confidence. Because if you go out and surf at 6 months, even if you do well, if you're lacking the strength to do that, that's going to erode your confidence. Versus for you, yeah, it took you time to get used to it again, but you saw yourself be successful. You saw yourself have the strength, and that builds on itself, and the confidence starts to snowball as you do things.
Exactly. Confidence is
Um,
key
yeah, 100%,
in
100%.
all things, not just ACL.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say, if you look back, what would you say is probably the biggest piece of advice you have for, ACLers who are going through this. If,
Man,
day one tour ACL, you can skip, something other than, call us at all on ACL.
I
Obviously,
was about to say,
we appreciate that.
go to Tommy. That's my first. I
Yeah.
need, for the record, guys, I'm not endorsed or
Yeah.
paid to do any of this, right? It's truly like, I'm so appreciative of the program that, that's why I keep recommending Tommy. Tommy, I just connected another, ACL warrior, I sent her your way as well. She's also based out of San Francisco.
Oh,
I truly recommend anytime I meet someone who's like, oh, I have an ACL issue or I've got a knee issue, even just a knee issue. I'm like, you should just
yeah.
talk to Tommy and just see what advice he has, because you've dedicated your career and your focus to the ACL. So find specialists,
Yeah.
right? Find people who are focused on it, because most PTs are generalists, and generalists are great. They're doing what they can, but a specialist is focused on your issue.
Yeah.
But no, I guess if I had to think about another big piece of advice, it's funny you said that. That is the advice I give people,
Yeah.
Tommy. I say call Tommy.
Hmm.
Um, biggest piece of advice is, I don't know if there's nothing revolutionary.
Yeah. It doesn't have
It's
to be.
something that people have probably heard this all the time. It's just, you got to put in the hours. You got to treat it like it's your number one priority,
Yeah.
and it's your body, it's your health, it's your knee. So I think most people can. If you're an athlete, like, you already have the discipline, and you know that you got to put in reps to
Yeah.
see gains. And so I think any athlete in the room can already get it. Like, hey, you didn't achieve the things that you've achieved without the commitment and the dedication. It's the same thing with your knee and your ACL. So maybe to the non-athletes who, you still want your knee. Everybody wants their knee working, right? You've still got all
Yeah.
these goals, and maybe you want to go to concerts and jump around and dance, and you want to, be able to run around in the yard with your kids, right? Um, everybody needs their knee, but if you don't have that, that sort of that athletic background of any sort, I would say commit to the program. Don't take shortcuts. It takes time. It takes consistency. So hit the gym, figure out how to make it work in your schedule. Lean on people for help. That's the big thing I did, was leaned on my support system. So, Tommy, like we were talking about, I lived in San Francisco. I lived in I shared a 400 square foot, 1 bedroom apartment with my then girlfriend. She's now my fiance. Our relationship survived that. So if you can survive something like that, go ahead and propose at that point. But we were living in this tiny little shoebox of an apartment, and I'm super lucky. Again, coming from a place of privilege here, I know not everyone can have access to this, but those first few weeks, I was able to move down to my parents' house. My parents live in the Bay Area, in the South Bay, but they live in the suburbs, and they had a whole, room, and they had all this space for me. And my dad's retired. My mom's, her career isn't too crazy, and so they were able to really help me out, while my girlfriend was in dental school at the time, and she was in school from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'm not even exaggerating. 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. was like a normal day. Sometimes it was even worse. And so she wasn't able to give me the support at the time, especially in the beginning when you're most helpless. So lean on your support system. If that means calling your parents and saying, "Hey, I know I'm an independent adult, but I need you guys to baby me again." Hopefully they would want to do something like that for you. I'm really lucky that mine were able to help me out with that in the beginning. And then when I did move back to SF after a few weeks, my fiance really stepped up and helped me out with a bunch of stuff. And so ask for help, lean on your support system. You're going to need help to really have a fast and speedy
Yeah.
recovery.
No, I think that's such great advice. And I think what that can kind of also come down to too is planning. Like you said, you mapped out, okay, how am I going to get around this, Fort Ford walk up, get around the hills of San Francisco, or, you're walking around places,
Yep.
suburb makes that a lot easier. And I think that's part of getting the plan in place with this, and putting in the hours too, I think is a great, we always say time is a multiplier, right? And that's why, it drives me up the wall when we see people, 6 months you're going to be running, 6 months, you could be in the same place at 12 months as you are at 6. The only thing that moves that forward is you do, right?
Yep.
And you have to build that strength.
Yep.
So that's why we talk in terms of how much time something can take, but you got to meet it. And I think that's what's really helpful is, for you, you knew the criteria, you knew the tests you were going, we mapped out the plan to achieve it, and then that, I think,
Yep.
like you said, kept you motivated. So, um, dude, this has been awesome. I so appreciate you joining me to do this.
Appreciate you,
Like you
Tommy.
said, I know there's no compensation for taking, holiday week and spending some time talking about it. You referred a ton of people. We appreciate that so much. Obviously we're a small business and we've grown so much just from people, like you sharing your stories. And now we get these hot spots of places where, California and San Francisco is mostly one of them. And,
I love
places
it.
like Utah where other people are located too. So,
I love it.
so appreciate that. And,
Yeah.
um, yeah, dude, any final thoughts, anything you want to add?
Um, if you're thinking about it, just go with Tommy. Like, do yourself a favor. He knows what he's doing. Trust the program. And like we were talking about earlier, there will be a day. There will be a day when you're not thinking about your knee anymore. And truly, to anyone going through this right now, I can completely sympathize. It sucks, but there's going to be that day when you're not thinking about your knee, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So, looking forward to you all experiencing that.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. I appreciate you being a model for this community. That's always what people are like, will I ever come back same? So to hear you doing it, to hear you out there
Yeah.
carving is awesome. So I
Yeah,
appreciate it, man.
connect
It
me
was
with
great catching up
anyone.
with you.
Anyone who's thinking about it still. You've already have connected me with some, and I've sent some people your way too. But if anybody is listening in or has questions, Tommy, happy to always chat through my experience and help them work out the program that works for them.
Absolutely, dude. So appreciate it. I will catch up with you soon. Appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate you, Tommy.
And anyone else, we'll post this on the page. Any questions or anything, feel free to comment on them. We'll also post this to our YouTube channel, which is, we don't post that much there, but we've been posting longer form interviews. So appreciate it, Vybhav. We'll talk soon,
Appreciate
buddy.
you. Take care, everyone.